because writers are labeled always, or put into the shelves according to their ethnicity and their nationality. And this is wrong. Times changed, but nevertheless, this stubborn, labeling Croatian author. What I get, for instance, is Croatian author living in Amsterdam.
Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing Dubravka Ugrešić. Tonight, she is here to celebrate the relaunch of her nonfiction book, American Fictionary. 25 years ago, in the early 90s, Dubravka accepted a guest lecturer position at Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut, leaving her home in Zagreb during the early stages of what would be a 4-year war. Yugoslavia, as she knew it, was dissolving, while in America, specifically in New York, Ugrešić experienced an American world, which she describes as freely setting up its norms, the norms of its normalcy. From this liminal space comes American Fictionary, where each chapter is loosely dedicated to exploring a word, like manual, homeland, mailbox, couch potato, harassment, body, and nearly 24 more. The essays in here are raw, surreal, tender, and often wickedly funny. Take the chapter Bagel, in which she denounces the muffin and the donut, or Coca-Cola, in which the signature red can suddenly flashes into the image of a knife, or Shrink, where she confesses to a split personality, seeing double, and to housing parallel worlds. In 1993, only a year after she returned to Zagreb from Connecticut, she left again on a longer, more permanent exile. This book serves as an almost historical document of that violent and very alive year, when home was a world away, but not yet lost. Also joining us is Ellen Elias-Bursak, who translated a portion of American Fictionary. Ellen translates fiction and nonfiction from the Bosnian, Croatian, and Serbian. She's also the vice president of the American Literary Translators Association. Thank you, Ellen, for being here and for moderating tonight's discussion. Please join me in welcoming Dubravka Ugrešić and Ellen Elias-Bursak.
So we're each going to read one of the essays, and I'll start. Missing. Let me see. My mother collects other people's deaths, rattling them mournfully like coins in a piggy bank. Did you know Petrovich died? Asks mother over the phone. Really, I say, though I've no idea who this Petrovich is. Yes, imagine a heart attack, says mother, stressing the words. Oh, I say. Poor man, sighs mother, ending her little verbal funeral rite, and she files Petrovich away in her mental piggy bank. Mother tells me these sorts of things. Talking about them allows her to prolong anonymous Petrovich's life for another moment, light him an invisible candle. By counting out other people's deaths like pocket change, she holds her own fears at bay. But I'm not interested in deaths. They're so final. I'm interested in disappearances. One year, my Zagreb friend Knaflets disappeared as well. People said he'd gone to America. When I first went to America, someone gave me his phone number. I called the number, somewhere in Texas. He answered, but the person I was speaking to was no longer my friend Knaflets. Now I don't think of calling him. He too has disappeared. And then one year, there was a journalist who took up my favorite theme of disappearance and wrote an article about it. It turned out that is the microphone? Oh, I think I must have done something. And then, that's better. And then one year there was a journalist who took up my favorite theme of disappearance and wrote an article about it. It turned out that 2,847 people had disappeared in Yugoslavia that year. I even remember the exact figure. That year, 2,847 Yugoslavs could not be found among the living or the dead. I find New York the most confusing. As I walk through the city's streets, I often think I must be in the middle of a nightmare. There it goes again. I often think I must be in the middle of a nightmare. I see a man with a plastic bag. There's a long stick of American celery poking from it. And I can see clearly he's my friend Nenad. Hey, Nenad, I call. Hey, what are you doing here? He looks at me but doesn't recognize me. Goodness, I whisper, confused. He shrugs his shoulders and walks on with the long stick of celery in his bag. A taxi passes. In it is my friend Berti. Hey, Bertie. The taxi stops at a crossing. The light's red. Hey, Bertie. Bertie looks at me through the window. He smiles, but he doesn't recognize me. What's this, I think? If he were here, if that were Bertie, he'd surely say hello, I think, but I'm not certain. At the park I watch a cleaner clearing away dry leaves. He blows them away with an enormous leaf blower, making rustling golden yellow heaps. A magician. For a moment I clearly see the profile of my friend Pavle. Hey, Pavle, how come you're here? I shout. Hey! I go up to him and tap him on the shoulder. He turns around and says in English with no foreign accent, "Stop that, ma'am, or I'll call the police." So I give up. The newspaper seller on the corner is my Zagreb friend Vilma. I buy the papers from her every day on the corner of 8th Street and University Place. I gaze at her for a long time, put the money into her hand knowingly, and take my New York Times. I don't say a word. I'm no longer insisting. I pretend I don't know she's Vilma. Thank you. Have a nice day. Here in Middletown, the situation is altogether different. It's a small town. I don't know a soul. I'm a stranger. They're at home. Locals. But still, to be on the safe side, I memorize every face. The salesperson at Bob's, the cashier at Waldbaum's, the waiter at the Opera House, the cop by the clock tower. I let my eyes range over the names in the local telephone directory. Briggith Gloria, Kilby Peter, Hills Karen. I don't know anyone. I feel safe and serene. Everything is as it should be. I'm a stranger. They are locals, at home. At about noon each day, the mailman comes and brings the mail. I open the Zagreb newspapers of November 29th, 1991. I read an article about missing persons. 30,000 missing persons have been registered in Croatia, writes the author. People are looking for their vanished brothers, husbands, wives, children, parents. Not only have several villages and towns been razed to the ground, but these 30,000 people are gone as well. They can no longer be found among the living or the dead. Terrible, I think. It's just as well that I'm here where it's safe. I'm a stranger here. They're all at home. Everything is as it should be. Someone called Peter lives near me. Someone called Gloria. Someone called Karen. I'm protected. Nothing can happen to me. Suddenly, I hear the doorbell. I go to the door, open it, and people I have never seen before surge into my apartment. They pour in uncontrollably, like a flood. Women, children, old men, the wounded, soldiers. I'm Željko, a young man introduces himself. It's 2 months since I went missing somewhere near Pirot. My sister Ljubica Oreški is looking for me. I'm a mother, mumbles a woman. I disappeared in September somewhere near Drniš. My son Rade Brakus is looking for me. And I understand. Here they are, all 30,000. Come in, I say. Find somewhere to sit. Make yourself at home. We'll manage somehow. They arrange themselves quietly. There are so many, I think, and they all fit into my small apartment as if it were transparent, as if they were transparent, I think, as if they were playing cards, one laid down over the other. That's because they've disappeared, I think. That's why they're so collapsible. And as I cook a meal to feed them all, I think about how the globe is like an egg timer, like communicating vessels. There's a copy of everything, as in a library. There's a Berlin here in my neighborhood, 10 minutes drive away, west and east. Nothing has been left out. There's a copy of everything somewhere, especially here. There's a Paris in Texas, and a Moscow, and a Madrid, and a Copenhagen, and a Venice, and a London, and a Hamburg, and New York is merely another name for New Amsterdam. The missing don't disappear then. They simply spring up elsewhere. For instance, in my apartment. It's all right, I think. Everything's all right. There's no need to worry. I'll look after your brother, Ljubica Oreški. The telephone rings. It's my mother calling from Zagreb. Did you know? She begins slowly, and I already anticipate the familiar soft rattle in the receiver. I know, Mother, no need to tell me. They're here. We're all here, I say, and I hear a rich jangle like a slot machine suddenly spitting out a whole pile of coins.
I know that in the meantime, the audience started to crave for a heavy East European accent, and I'm going to give it to you. If I had to choose between a donut, a muffin, and a bagel, I'd always go for the bagel, without a moment of hesitation. Although I admit there is something to be said for donut. A donut is a small, ring-shaped, deep-fried bun, as Webster's dictionary says. A donut is a cheap, simple, common American pastry. Variants on this simple fried dough, devoid of imagination, this dumpling with a hole, this amicable round bun, have taken over diners, American supermarket freezers, and fast food stands. I admit there is something alluring to its plump, good-naturedness, its wholesome color, and its simple pastry heart. To taste the real thing, go to rural bakery. There you'll see armies of swelling golden brown donuts boldly emerging. The essence of donut is not only in its simple nature, but also in its sociability. A donut simply cannot be experienced in the singular, because it hardly exists in the singular. A donut is always donuts. When donuts bought at the farm stand are put into a paper bag, their heady aroma of the cinnamon makes the customer giddy. At the same time, the bag must not be closed. The donut, whose charm is in any case of brief duration, lives on air. Lack of oxygen will transform it into an indifferent lump of barely digestible dough, devoid of all appeal. What can I say about muffin? Webster tells us it is a small, domed, quick bread made from eggs and flour baked in a mold and usually eaten while hot. I would say that the verbal satisfaction coming from pressing together the upper and lower lips to make the sound M, and then the slow rub of the upper teeth against the lower lip to make the sound of double F, is all that muffin has to offer. A muffin is an infantile form of mush, a hodgepodge. The muffin is a treat for poor and the amateur. The muffin is not just simple, it's crude. It's a nothing, simply by virtue of being an anything. The muffin is has neither character nor consistency. The muffin shows a tendency to crumble. Besides, the quality of any food can be measured by a simple test. Can it be eaten on its own? Ask yourself that question in the case of the muffin, and you will immediately feel your mouth go dry. The muffin cries out for us to wash it down with tea or milk. The muffin has no personality. The muffin is the zombie of breads. As I said at the outset, when choosing among donuts, muffins, and bagels, I definitively go for the bagel. A bagel isn't a treat, it's a thing and it's a food. In the case of bagels, I do not agree with Webster, which describes it as a small, it isn't small at all, bread roll, in the shape of donut, donut shaped. That's what Webster says, which of course implies that the donut is older than the bagel, and that is a damn lie. Not only do bagels have their own long Jewish tradition, but they have stylistic sub-variants in many countries, especially Slavic. This cosmopolitan form of baked good is known as the bublica in Dalmatia, the bublik in Russia, the gevrek in Macedonia and Bulgaria. And that's just the Slavic countries. A bagel is above all a ritual. On Sunday, you have to pop down to the little Jewish bakery and buy a decent quantity of bagels. A decent quantity, I say. Bagels also do not tolerate solitude. Then you have to cut them in half, spread them with butter, and on top of the butter, like flower petals, scatter thin orange flakes of salmon. This is the classical, simple, elegant version. Tuna spread is good as well, and so is the laborer's salt of the earth version with fresh herring and little rings of onion. Such a morning bagel is unimaginable without the Sunday edition of the New York Times. The fat Sunday edition must be spread over the table. Place the bagels on the newspaper. The smell of the bread and printer's ink is important. Make plenty of crumbs as you eat. Leave greasy fingerprints and let the interplay of the food and printed text determine the path the reader's eye follows. The strength of the bagel lies in its consistency, its tangibility. Only a fool would hold a muffin in his hand, while greasy, knobby donut is a tactile insult. A bagel with its smooth, taut crust, its firm round body, fits perfectly into the curve of the palm. The bagel sits in the hand as if molded to it. In its natural bed, it is a divine disc. The bagel plays naturally with the hand. It fits naturally like a ring on a finger. The fingers likes it, and the bagel feels good too. The larger, drier Slavo-Turkish version, the gevrek, can be worn on the arm like bracelet. The essence of the bagel lies in the whole. The essence of the whole is visual. On Sundays, grab hold of a bagel and walk to Central Park. Stop by the place where the roller skaters dance and bring the bagel to your eye. I look at the scene through the little hole. If it is too small, I hollow out the dough, enlarge the view. There's nothing odd about it. I'm peering through a bagel, so what? No one gets excited, and why should they? It's a question of optics, I say. The detail, not the whole. The whole is too big, optically indigestible. It doesn't fit in the eye, doesn't reach the brain. A detail glides easily to the eye through the tunnel of ruddy dough. In time to the music, a black tattooed forearm glides through the air. A muscle firm as an apple glides through the air. Eyeglasses in a black and white frame glide by. A broad grin glides by. Skates glide. A leg glides. A gold earring glides. Looks glide. Nestled in my little circle like a mouse in a cheese, I survey the world. No one can do anything to me. And when I get bored, I take the dough ring off my eye, alter the optics, fold myself like a telescope. I wander through Central Park, nibbling my bagel. Half for me, half for the birds. There. That's why I'll always vote for the bagel. That's why I always prefer bagels to muffins and donuts. Long live the bagel. Death to that blunder of egg and dough, the worthless muffin. As for the donut, let it be.
Well, our idea is to start a conversation and then include all of you. So, in my experience of, I didn't actually translate this book initially. It was translated by Celia Hawksworth of England, and then Dubravka Ugrešić decided to revise it and work it up into a slightly new edition with changes and new things to translate. So I worked on it with her and edited it with what she had in mind, and here we are. But I will go right from looking through the bagel in Central Park to say that my experience of this book, and I'm interested to hear as you were putting it together, is that the narrator or the voice in the book is looking out of one eye at what was going on in Yugoslavia during the war, and out of the other eye at experiencing life in the United States. And there's this kind of bizarre parallel. I think our two readings show a little bit of that. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about putting that together, thinking about it at the time, and the reissue, and the issue, the question of the reissue.
Yeah. That book has its history. It was first published 25 years ago. It was published in different countries with a different title. Originally, it was published in Croatian with the title Američki fikcionar. What's going on?
No, a child is crying upstairs, who perhaps is related to it.
So then it was published in Dutch in Netherlands under the title Nationaliteit geen, nationality none. And then it was published in UK and in this country under the title
Have a nice day.
Yes, I know, but it's too long to pronounce. It is Have a Nice Day, From the Balkan War to the American Dream. Why? Why that title? Because the editor said that nobody in the world would understand the word fictionary. I said, but people know dictionary, fictionary, rings the bell, fictionary. He said, no way. So he's in fact the author of that awful title. And then, more than that, the book appeared with the cover, where on the cover was Mickey Mouse going to Fantasyland or somewhere. So I found my own book in English book in London bookstores in a humor section. So all in all, it's a very nervous book, narrated, written by the author, whose country, Yugoslavia, was falling apart at that time, and I was supposed to teach at the American University, Wesleyan University, in 1992. The war in Yugoslavia started in 1991. I came earlier into this country, taking my visa in Amsterdam, where I was a guest of my publisher for some 3-4 weeks. I stayed there thinking, should I go earlier, should I go back, what should I do? I was really upset about all of that. Finally, I got visa, I came to this country, but I also got a commissioned column by Dutch daily NRC Handelsblad to write about my experiences in America. So it was all a big mess. I mean, with half of my mind, I was in back home, caring about my family first of all, worrying what could happen to them. With another peace of mind, I was in Amsterdam thinking about my Dutch audience. I didn't know anything about my Dutch audience. And with other half of mind, I was here in this country trying to function. I was supposed to teach and to be present. So everything which came into my foci, it was random. It was almost not my choice. I mean, I'm a serious person. Otherwise, if I would be in some normal state condition, I wouldn't choose to write about such sweet, trivial things like bagels, like couch potatoes, and so on and so on. So the book is not completely unserious, I think. So why I decided to, I didn't decide to republish a book, but that was basically the idea of my publisher, Open Letter Books, who thought that maybe the book after 25 years would be well received. We will see about that, because officially book is coming out tomorrow or after tomorrow. I don't know the publication date. So I agreed, and I think that I'm going on risk. I mean, this is the risky thing. And from the other hand, I couldn't miss it, because it rarely happens to the authors to have that second chance. Only big stars and classics, they have this opportunity. But for me, it is such a big thing that I thought, okay, let us see how it will work a second time. Of course, I rearranged a bit things. Ellen, she helped a lot with editing book, refreshing it, making it that language which in the 25 years became stiff, more elastic and more youthful, and so we did the work, didn't we? So, and I also wrote a postscript which explains the whole case, and I hope it is not boring.
Hardly boring.
So tell me about your job then.
Well, it was an interesting challenge. I mean, it also the other translator, Celia Hawksworth, and not the other translator, the translator Celia Hawksworth, who had initially done it 25 years ago, is British, and one of the things that we wanted to do was to Americanize it. After all, it's about the United States, but Celia had been translating all of Dubravka's books at that point, and so it was logical that she'd do this one as well. But so that was one of my tasks in taking it on, and also Dubravka changed things in the course of us working on it. I think you threw out one of the essays, you added a little bit onto another, and then the postscript, so there were parts of it to actually translate. But I've also translated other work of Dubravka's, for example, a novel of hers which just came out this last spring called Fox, which, again, it's a collaborative effort because David Williams translated the first chapter and I translated the rest of the chapters. But anyway, so and she and I have known each other since when? 1978, 79, something like that. So we're old friends from Zagreb.
We are a new generation of old women. That's why I went on a risk to publish the book, which was published 25 years ago, and to admit that publicly. So
Right, exactly. So I think that's mainly the story of working on this particular book. It was really fun to do, and I was really moved by that experience of the two eyes seeing two different things at the same time, something I've experienced a certain amount going back and forth between Croatia and here, just the two realities being so different and trying to negotiate between them. But I'd like to open it up.
You were talking about the Mickey Mouse on the cover of the British edition, so did you have any similar struggles with the cover of this edition?
No. No, I mean, in fact, no, because the designer of open letter books is excellent in my opinion. Although, yes, the first version was a little bit strange because he put sort of like a drawing of Yugoslavia, which in red, and it looked more like a dog's bone than a map. So we changed. I said that I mean, I didn't say that. Everybody said that the best design is American flag. It is really. It's so that the best thing is to use that design. I mean, and he did. I think he did that wonderfully.
It seems odd that your publisher didn't know that Fictionary is a game. It's when I went to college, it was played a lot.
Pictionary.
Oh, Fictionary,
Oh,
yeah, but there's another version called Fictionary. It's like it's not a weird word.
I didn't. I know for
Yeah.
Pictionary, but not Fictionary.
There's a Fictionary. It's all verbal instead of drawing pictures. You make up words. You fool people. You make up fake words and you guess which ones are real and fake.
Really?
Words, yeah. Yeah. Actually, I would think you would enjoy it.
I'm sure.
But that fits to the idea.
Yeah.
That fits to the idea.
Well, in the
That's where when I saw
Da.
the notice in the Brookline Booksmith about this, I assumed that it was a joke on Fictionary.
Yeah, no. But later on,
you have a whole
didn't-
documentation of the.
Oh yeah.
She documents the different ways that she began seeing it come up. Where is that?
Yeah.
It's here at the
But
end.
later on, I discovered something when book was already this edition, which I just started to read some books a little bit, which I already read a long time ago, and in my opinion, there are two best books written about America, and one was published a long time ago, 1978, and I read it then, and it is the book written by Dutch architect Rem Koolhaas, the book about New York, delirious New York. Why I'm mentioning New York? Because my book finishes, in fact, it is less the book about America, and somehow it ends up like a love story to New York more than, I didn't have that ambition to write the book about America at all. So, and then the other book is the book by Jean Baudrillard, America. And from there, I just found a fantastic quote that he said that what you have to do is to enter the fiction of America, enter America as fiction. That was his approach. This fictionality, because he says America is neither dream not reality, it's hyper reality. So he plays with the texture of America, not as a reality, a country, a state, a geography, politics, or what, but as some sort of a machine for dreams. And the same idea is also promoted by Rem Koolhaas, and I didn't know at the beginning when I was writing my book, but I found support in those two authors. So.
I loved the part in the postscript where you talk about being on the veranda in Oklahoma. I think it was, and how You heard a sound from your childhood, sort of an
Mhm.
ancient sound at this point,
Mhm.
of a train coming through the hills,
Mhm.
and it sort of pierced you in this way, and you had the awareness that you could find home
Mhm.
wherever those familiar sounds were. Essentially, the idea of home
Mhm.
has become something different for you, and I thought that was just so beautiful. That the veranda at that point was your homeland. But I wonder
Yeah.
what you think from this distance, observing all of these migrations, forced migrations,
Yeah.
displacements of populations around the globe.
Yeah.
That I'm sure you're keenly aware of since your time.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile that? Do you have thoughts, abiding thoughts about how one lives with this, or do you have a sense of wisdom that you
Yeah.
earned yourself from being on the other side that you could share with us?
I have a problem when I'm in this country, and that problem is that being a writer, I constantly see something which is totally different from. It is reality, but it is not this reality you're asking me question about, because this endless beauty, it is so different from Europe that I'm so fascinated with it. I enjoy this, and I constantly have poetic ideas. I think in metaphors, and sometimes my friends, they are angry on me because I don't see things I'm supposed to see. Migrants, question of migrants. I will answer that question. But what I want to say is that sheer beauty of first of all, space, skies, colors, light. New York has that symbolic place of fantastic symbolic place. My mind goes around such things. I was today. I think it is clear that I visited a haircut salon today. Okay, for all of you to yeah. Okay. So, and it was suddenly it started to pour. That was, when was that? Around 11,
Yeah,
12.
very heavy rain. yes.
It was such a heavy rain, and I went. It was a glass, and I was waiting for you, and then the opposite. It was a fitness center, but as rain was pouring, those fantastic bodies on some treadmills and so on. It was a scene for the movie, for the camera, even. And I was like a child. I could not think about problems and about this and that. It was simply, I am constantly seeing such gifts, beauty fragments, visual excitement. Um, um, so probably I would be the worst political analyst of the situation in America, but from the other hand, I would probably the only place where I could become more or less a poet is this country, not in Europe. No, there I'm a political thinker. I'm an essayist. I'm a fiction writer, but it is more difficult here. The same happens sometimes with Italy. Italy is such a beautiful country. I'm so angry on everyday life there. I mean, they irritate me. They make me nervous. But then, those landscapes and sea and smells and scent and beautiful food and everything, you forget about everything. Okay, about migrations. It's a global problem, At the last year, somebody said that 60 million people, right? Around 60 million people are migrating, and this is the biggest number of people after the Second World War, right? So I think it is everybody's problem. It is a problem even in a tiny Croatia, where migrants are now knocking on the door and being stopped by Croatian police, and living in Bosnia by the border, trying desperately to somehow to enter like more favorable European countries like England, Germany, France, and so on and so forth. So I think that it will be awful that each country would have to decide whether they will take refugees or not. I think that a decision, positive decision, should be made on some, I don't know, UN level, on some general level, about decent treatment of people, about letting them in, and about starting this, because we started as refugees. I mean, our civilization started with exile. Okay, Adam and Eve, and these God's fingers which expelled them out of the paradise. Why? Because of the knowledge. Okay, because of the curiosity, because of the first of all, female, that urge to eat that apple from the tree of knowledge, right? So, and they were punished. And I think that this story, I mean, is like an imprint, like a tattoo on human race. We are all punished for what? We are constantly expelled from somewhere, and somebody claims that we shouldn't because we lived in the paradise. I went on exile the moment Franjo Tuđman, first Croatian president, proclaimed Croatia a paradise on earth. So I immediately knew these are Eve's genes, that something is wrong with that.
I just wanted to know the status of the apology to the muffin at this point. The apology to the muffin at this point. It's been a year since the book came out, I think. So how are you working? Any developments on your tolerance for muffins?
I don't know. I tried. I desperately tried. There is because my nephew, he asked me. He said, "You are being so rude to muffins." He's a Starbucks kid. He likes that, coffee and those muffins, and I tried to somehow to make things right in his direction, but it didn't work. No, I couldn't.
So I wanted to know how you feel that digital transformation has changed exile, because obviously 25 years, a lot has happened, and one thing that has happened is the change in technologies. So maybe you'd be in the park, not looking through a bagel, but looking at your phone.
Kako je digitalna ta promjena u zadnjih 25 godina promijenila
everything? It's the most radical change we experienced, but it went so quickly. iPhone 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 9. I mean, so constant produce of. So we had to. I mean, we used all our brains just to learn all those gadgets. So we didn't have time to contemplate. I know that this is the story about civilization. When we got phones, those Iskra phones, we didn't contemplate, how we are changing, how our fingers are changing, but they take this heavy receiver, and do this. So we just used it. And but this is a radical change for cultural, because
kao izgnanstvo kako se promijenilo u kontekstu telefona.
sa telefonom.
Da.
Aha. I don't know. Maybe you should ask Kim Kardashian and his husband. What is the husband of Kim? What is the husband?
Kanye West.
Kanye West, yeah. I think that he has some thoughts about refugees, exile refugees having iPhones and wearing seekers and T-shirts and something like on that level of fashion. So no, I don't think that I have any serious thought about iPhones and exile. I just think that general in 25, if you ask me a question, what changed in those 25 years from the first edition, it changed a lot. I mean, what changed, let's say, in everyday life, it's landscape. You don't see phone booths anymore, right?
Yeah.
They disappeared, those beautiful red phone booths. And then what else disappeared, I noticed that in New York, newsstands, they disappeared. There are no, I can't buy, before, this is like the scene about buying New York Times and, I mean, I can't find New Yorker on I can't find any newspapers. I don't know how to grab newspapers and go to the cafe and read, because those last remaining newsstands, they sell bottles of water and chewing gums, and so that changed too. Communication, yes, yeah. All of that, landscape, people changed. They do all the time this. Before, they were nicely looking to each other's eyes. Now they do this. I mean, a lot of, and then of course culture, politics, countries, borders. I experienced that because Yugoslavia fell apart. I mean, it's an exclusive, I would say, experience that you suddenly overnight you are forced to belong to one part of the former of your country, and to change your passport, to change your identity, to like more one part than the other, and to hate another part, and so on and so forth. I mean, so it's not easy to really to answer the question, because a lot of things I tried to, but I didn't manage.
We have a hand back there, yes.
So I'm curious about how you see who you were then and what you wrote then, and I'm curious about if you were also saying things to Americans then and again that you wanted them to know about themselves, or that you might have wanted them to know about a different sensibility which you had come from.
You know what? Probably it's a gender thing, you know. Men like to preach and to tell Americans what Americans should think about themselves. You know, women writers, they have a different approach. I never ever wanted to send a message about, I mean, it's indecent, I mean, to send some message to Americans. This is my view on my environment, which was American at that time, and through this little hole of Bagel. I mean, it's a specific, very narrowed view. I didn't have any ambition to write a book about America or Americans or politics or history, nothing like that, just about details, really, which somehow came by chance to my to my foci, and that's why it was a problem when I tried to. I couldn't change. Actually, I couldn't change this book. It stayed more or less the same, and I realized that that's the curse of this form, dictionary, fictionary. You can just add things, but you can't really change them. And so for me, I mean, this book now became more dear than before, because it's at least I read that passing of time. I mean, that's 25 years. Some things are so fresh as I would write them equally today, most of them, in fact. So it's a story about the time and the observer in the time.
So you were saying that you're a serious writer when you're talking about, and then you're talking about how you made American Fictionary. It's kind of light, some of it, and funny, some of it. And I was thinking about, yes, you're a serious writer. When I read your work, I think, I don't think otherwise. But I laugh a lot of times when I'm reading your writing, even Fox, right? I'm reading it, I'm laughing out loud because of the way you're telling the stories and the allusions you're making, of course, the character development. Also, it's very self-effacing, Fox, to me. But then American Fictionary, I was thinking, America, does it lend itself to some kind of humor that you can't create with other cultures that you're writing about? I find humor in lots of different cultures that you're writing about, but this one in particular, right, that it lends itself to humor Americans. And as an American who goes out in the world some, I always feel like, we are comical to a lot of the world, that the world looks at us and kind of laughs, darkly or lightly at us oftentimes, or that we are seen as caricatures of, an American type, right? So I'm not saying that you do that in your book necessarily, but I feel like America does oftentimes, lend itself to that by European writers, and I was wondering if you're thinking, when you write, do you think about other places?
No, it is not true. For me, it's not, I don't see a comical side, at all. What touches me the most are little details which produce some sort of melancholy. I never wrote about that, but for instance, these are such little things which it is difficult to explain even why those details are sad. They talk about vulnerability, for instance, loneliness. Once I don't know why, once long time ago, I need some info about flights, Delta something. I called Delta Airlines in the midnight or 1 o'clock in inappropriate time, and the voice appeared and very kind female voice. And she gave me, we talked, and she said, flight to info, and then she said, where are you from? And then I said, could you tell me your name? She said, and I said my name. And I said, why do you ask that? Because I never ever travel. I never traveled in all my life. So when I talk with the customers, I like to ask them, that when I hear the foreign accent, I like to ask them their names so that I can guess from which country they're coming from. And it was I could just imagine it was a lonely voice of a lonely woman, a clerk in Delta, Info, whatever, and it was after the midnight, and I was probably, I don't know, the only living contact, We were like in space. It was such details, dear to me and important to me, And if I get that, then I can feel soul, emotion, something. I didn't explain anything. You don't
I'll ask you later. No, but one thing I want to say is it's interesting that if you go back and look at this book, because it's the 25 years, it's this nostalgia trip in a way about America. I mean, I'm nostalgic when I hear you talk in a way about certain ideas, and I think that now that it's been 25 years, the 25-year difference has caused this, to me, maybe you don't want to use that word, I don't want to really get into it deeply, but it is a bit of a nostalgic text now, in a sense, because it's things that we were just talking about, right? Things that no longer exist, some of them. I mean, the bagel persists and the muffin.
There is, because we all live in a nervous times.
Yeah.
We all live in insecure times. I mean, this is basic thing. We don't know, I mean, those experiences, you know, like, let's say, war in Yugoslavia. It was so, I'd never ever experienced anything like that my life will change radically. September 11th, the same. Suddenly, I mean, life was okay, everything was okay, future was in front of us, and suddenly, woof, something happens. So that, you know, somehow get into our psyche, and we are not the same people. I mean, we feel insecure. You know, that also, I mean, not only technology, you know, but also these times they made of us different people. When I was young, I'm always comparing myself, let's say, with my nephew. He's 21. And when I was 20, I mean, life was huge. It was, in Yugoslavia, they published a little book interviewing kids about, to contemplate about big issues. So a kid was asked, what is the beginning? And the kid said, or what is ends, I don't know. The kid said, beginning was when I was born and there is no end. So that was my feeling when I was his age. But he's totally different, you know. He's scared. He's frightened. He thinks already, he didn't finish university yet, but he's thinking whether he will find job or not, how he's going to survive. This is too much for a young person. And so on and so forth. This is just a detail. I mean, so times change too.
Aida had a question about that.
Thank you for being here with us again in Boston. I know that you're a great lover of Russian literature, and I recognize this element of bытовое or everyday in every book of yours, you know, the level of detail and how it speaks about large things. So maybe if you could tell us a little bit about your relationship with other authors, in particular Russian.
Kako odnos prema ruskim piscima i ruskoj književnosti kao tako je ono prisutno u obliku, ono što pišeš?
Aha. I must admit that although I was a voracious reader, and I read everything when I was young, I mean, anything. Anything was good, everything was good. So when I started to study, I studied comparative literature and then Russian literature and language. And then I think that Russian avant-garde literature became sort of formative for me. Not only Russian literature, it was avant-garde art, movies, beginning of film industry there, paintings, and especially literary theory. So that was I would say the biggest sort of, you know, push toward serious reading and literature taken seriously. So yes, and I still must admit that a couple of Russian avant-garde writers are dearest to me, like Isaac Babel. He's my idol and star, and I won't tell you more.
One more question? Anybody want to?
Go back to the theme of exile, because you mentioned that you are, and not just you, all of the people who were born in Yugoslavia, who were Yugoslavs, are in a sort of permanent exile because the country that was their country no longer exists, so they can't go back to it. I was just wondering about your sense of belonging in a literary sense. Where is your, I know that as a writer your primary allegiance is your language, but do you feel that you belong to a kind of tradition, or do you feel that there's a kind of lineage that you can trace? Or do you try to place yourself in a kind of literary community, and what would that be? And also, is there a story or something that for you as an author is an obsession, a story that you're constantly trying to tell or haven't told yet?
Yes, it is.
Yes, I would say that writers, unfortunately, still, this is the most rigid zone and most conservative zone, because writers are labeled always, or put into the shelves according to their ethnicity and their nationality. And this is wrong. Times changed, but nevertheless, this stubborn, labeling Croatian author. What I get, for instance, is Croatian author living in Amsterdam. Or when people are very kind, then they would say Croatian-born author. I'm not Croatian-born author, I'm Yugoslav-born author. And then, why do you care what ethnicity I am? Okay. Yeah, so what I want to say is that there are so many cases due to those migrations and change of lifestyle and this and that writers are traveling, writers are migrating. Writer would write on the language of the host country, adopt the language, or stay with the language of the old, or write in the third language. So, writers belong to the Republic of Letters. That's it. In that case, I deny being a Yugoslav, post-Yugoslav, Croatian, or whatever writer. I belong. I have a passport. I want to have a passport of Republic of Letters. That's how writers should be categorized. Yes, you are asking for material things. Whether I'm inspired, yes, part of it. There is this Yugoslav cultural heritage. Writers from, I don't know, Ivo Andrić, Danilo Kiš, Miroslav Krleža, and so on. But I must admit that the package is not big. Okay? The rest comes from all over.
Pitala te da li imaš kakvu obsesiju koju još nisi napisala ili ćeš tek ili si
About literary obsession, writing itself is obsession, and I know that there are certain thematic circles I'm constantly, writing about, and this is okay. This is all of us. We have something. I probably. Exile is one of those themes, or migrations, or loneliness, or I don't know. Did you notice anything like that in my work? You should tell me.
Well, I think that we'll end with that cheerful note. And thank you very much for coming and being involved. And thank you, Dubravka.
Thank you.
Thank you here at Brookline Booksmith. And